Marisha here, and today I'm going to be talking about eggs, specifically US versus UK when talking about eggs. Now, I came by the idea for this video when I was preparing for a different video about the cost of groceries in general between the two countries. And I realized that eggs are sort of their own special, unique thing when we're talking about comparing the two countries. There are a few factors to consider when talking about the difference of eggs in the US versus the UK. The first is the fact that the US is one of the few countries in the world that refrigerates eggs, and that has to do with the process of how we pasteurize them. I guess like this shell gets scrubbed enough that some of it wears away, and so it has to be refrigerated to keep it safe and sanitary. That is not the case in most of the world, including in the UK. So eggs are not refrigerated here. And I actually really like that because our fridge is not as big as an American fridge. And so having one less thing that I have to keep in there makes it nice to have room for other things. Um, but the other thing that really kind of became a factor when comparing prices is the fact that free range eggs are the default in the UK. And we know they obviously are not in the US. So when I first started comparing, okay, well, how much are eggs in Aldi in the US and how much are eggs in Aldi in the UK? I realized it wasn't a fair comparison because the eggs that I was talking about in the US were caged. um, and just, basically like we do not care about chickens' eggs. And the eggs that I'm talking about in the UK, regardless of where I was buying them, are free range. And I actually thought for a long time that you could only get free range eggs in the UK because that's all I've ever seen. But in researching for this video, I discovered there are non free range eggs in the UK. But it's that I think about 70% are free range. And I would say from my own personal experience, I don't think I've ever seen eggs in the grocery store that aren't. So I don't know if maybe it's you find them outside of London or I'm not looking hard enough, but I feel like I'm definitely buying the cheapest eggs that I can find and they're still free range. So talking a little bit about those prices then when you're trying to compare things that are even, I had to look for free range eggs in the States. And so I went on to Walmart's website to see what they offered in the line of free range eggs, and it is not a lot. Um, it's they have cage free eggs, which is not the same thing. Um, but free range eggs is like $10.47 to get a dozen free range eggs at Walmart. Whereas what I'm getting, I'm shopping a lot of times at Waitrose, which is kind of a spendier grocery store, but they have a line called Essential Waitrose, which is name brand or like store brand. And Essential is sort of like their very generic, cheapest stuff. It's still pretty good quality, and I feel like it's still pretty decent price compared to like, a Sainsbury's or even an Aldi or a Lidl. Like sometimes it's just as good of a price. And the other thing that I would say about eggs in the UK is it is much more prevalent or common to find 6 packs of eggs instead of dozen eggs. You can get a dozen, but if you go to where the eggs are, and again, they're not refrigerated, so if you go to the shelf where the eggs are, I would say a good 2/3 to 3/4 of what's on offer are 6 packs, and then the rest are 12 packs. So what you're gonna get is one of these cute little 6 packs of eggs, and like you can see, right? Essential Waitrose, they're free range. They don't make a non-free range. These are £1.40. And so obviously if I bought 2 of these, then I'm spending £2.80 for a dozen free range eggs. And to convert that to US dollars, that's $3.41. And so compare that to my dozen free range eggs from Walmart at $10.47. And that is a huge disparity. obviously. Eggs way cheaper when you actually are comparing like to like. And I'm not sure because I did just quickly try to find, okay, how much are a dozen eggs at Aldi when I went home for Christmas, and that dozen eggs $3.97. So still actually more expensive than what I'm paying here for a dozen eggs that are free range. And I'm pretty sure the Aldi ones were not free range. If you're in the States, drop in the comments, how much are you paying for a dozen eggs, and specify, are these just like your normal, like these are the cheapest eggs I can find, or these are the free range eggs that I get at this particular place or whatever. I'd be curious to know kind of what people are paying, especially since it sort of became a talking point during the election of like, well, the cost of eggs, right? So that's just to give you an idea of the fact that, like, um, not just price comparison, but also the fact that in Britain, it's not just eggs, but with a lot of things, I feel like they do a much better job of making food that is healthier, not only for the consumer, but also for the environment. You're not going to you don't have factory farms to the same extent that you do in America. I mean, I'm sure they exist here, but what I've seen when I've gone grocery shopping, in addition to just the free range eggs being sort of like the norm, that also seems to be sort of the case for their meat as well, that it's sort of it's grass-fed beef, and there's this kind of a more concern over here for the well-being of the animals that are being raised for meat. And there's also a much bigger industry for vegetarian and vegan food. So it makes it easier to eat a diet that is healthier. Whether you're saying that's because, like, oh, I'm not eating as much red meat because it's easier to get my hands on vegan or vegetarian options. It's easier to get my protein from eggs, and beans and stuff because they are reasonably priced. Or, and this is something that I might talk about more in depth in another video, the fact that they also are better about not putting weird stuff in food, like a lot of preservatives and things like that. Just now, the FDA banned red dye number 40, but that's something that has like not been in British food for like forever, right? Like, I think I talked at one point about how, um, for example, drinks over here are not dyed with like red 40, or was it Lake number 4 or whatever. They're dyed with like beet juice, right? So there's I feel like the food here is healthier. And again, I might do a more in-depth video for that, but certainly eggs, I think, are a good example to show how that is, and also to show how it is possible to produce things like eggs in a way that is more humane for the animals, and also as a result better for the environment, because I won't go into all the details of the environmental implications of CAFOs and things like that. um, but it's possible to do that and still have them be at a price that is affordable for the consumer. And so the fact that that's not being done in the States is a real issue that I think that consumers and voters should be made aware of and should make a priority. In the meantime, like, subscribe, tell your friends how gnarly this channel is, and I'll see you soon.